Today, we're diving into the world of pollinators. You know, those tiny, often unseen workers who literally keep our planet alive. And our guide for this journey is this amazing document from Sri Lanka's Ministry of Environment, which really pulls back the curtain on their incredible diversity and the urgent crisis they're facing.
So let's just kick things off with a number that's pretty mind-blowing, 99%. You're looking at a page from the guide, and even if you can't read the text, the images tell the story. Nearly all of the world's wild flowering plants depend on pollinators. They're the invisible engine driving the very foundation of our natural world.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get a handle on the huge role of these unseen workers. Then, we'll break down what a pollinator actually is. After that, we get to meet some of Sri Lanka's most fascinating bees, face the tough reality of the world they're up against, and finally, look at a really hopeful blueprint for how we can take action.
Okay, first up, the unseen workers. It is so easy to overlook them, right? But our entire world is literally built on the work they do. A job carried out by some of the planet's smallest, yet most important creatures.
The guide hits us with this incredible number, 1.7 million. That's how many known species of flowering plants there are on Earth. And here's the kicker. The vast majority of them can't reproduce on their own. They need somebody else to carry their genetic material from one flower to the next. I mean, think about it. That is the colossal, planet-sustaining task managed by pollinators.
So, what even is a pollinator? What are we talking about here? Well, the answer is a biological process so fundamental that without it, so much of the life we see around us just wouldn't exist.
At its core, pollination is all about plant reproduction. It's that moment when pollen, which holds the male genetic material, gets moved from a flower's stamen over to its stigma. This simple little transfer is the spark that lets a plant get fertilized and, most importantly, produce the seeds and fruits that guarantee a next generation.
And check this out. This diagram, straight from the Sri Lankan guide, just shows you how beautifully simple this whole exchange is. A bee visits a flower for some nectar, and pollen just clings to its body. When it buzzes over to the next flower, that pollen rubs off, and boom, the cycle is complete. It is a perfect partnership. The bee gets a meal, and the plant gets to live on.
So now that we've got the how, let's meet some of the who. The guide from Sri Lanka introduces us to this amazing cast of characters, and each one has its own unique style and job to do.
First on the list, from the pages of the guide, is the seriously impressive giant honeybee, Apis dorsata. And as you can guess from the name, this is a truly formidable insect. It's known for building these huge nests way up in trees and traveling for miles and miles.
And get this, a single colony can have up to 60,000 bees. That's basically the size of a small city. They are total powerhouses when it comes to foraging, covering huge areas. But what's really fascinating is their notoriously aggressive nature. It means that, unlike other honeybees, they've pretty much resisted being domesticated, so they remain this truly wild and vital force in nature.
Next, let's meet a species that plays a slightly different but just as crucial role, the Asian honeybee, or Apis cerana.
So unlike its giant cousin, the Asian honeybee is a bit more of a homebody, preferring to build its nests in sheltered spots like tree hollows. And this adaptability is what makes it so special. It's not just a critical wild pollinator, it's also a cornerstone of commercial beekeeping in the region.
And the diversity just keeps going. You've got the dwarf honeybee building these small exposed nests. And then there's the tiny stingless bee. Now this one is super interesting. It's an absolute powerhouse for pollinating in home gardens and small farms. It just goes to show, even the smallest players can have a massive impact.
And finally, let's meet a bee that kind of breaks all the rules, the carpenter bee. As we can see from the source, this bee is different. It doesn't live in a big social colony like the others we've just seen. Nope, this one's a solitary artist.
Yep, this is what's called a solitary bee. So instead of a hive, it expertly tunnels into wood to build its nest. This unique skill makes it a vital pollinator for specific plants, especially those with larger flowers, like passion fruit. The guide even shows its place in the whole ecosystem, pointing out its natural predators, like the shrikebird.
All right, so now that we've met these essential workers, we have to talk about the threats they're facing. The guide is crystal clear on this. These vital populations are in decline, and they're up against a silent but growing crisis, one that's driven by human activity. Threat number one, and it's a big one, is the loss of their homes. As this image really drives home, when we clear forests for agriculture or to build cities, the very places that pollinators need for food and shelter,
well, they just disappear. And then there's modern agriculture itself, which poses a huge danger. The widespread use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers creates this toxic soup in the environment. And these chemicals, they don't know the difference between a pest and a beneficial insect. They end up poisoning pollinators and contaminating their food.
And on top of all that, you have the overarching threat of climate change. Pollination depends on perfect timing. Flowers have to bloom right when pollinators are active. But rising temperatures and crazy weather patterns are throwing that delicate natural clock completely out of sync, causing the whole system to start breaking down.
But this isn't just a story of doom and gloom. The guide from Sri Lanka's Ministry of Environment also gives us a clear and honestly hopeful blueprint for action. It shows us a real path forward to conserving these amazing creatures.
The plan they lay out is smart because it's all interconnected. It starts with raising awareness, getting this information out to the public and into schools. That's then backed up by dedicated research so we can better understand what pollinators need. And that knowledge leads to smarter management of our forests and gardens, and of course, promoting safe, sustainable beekeeping.
And what's really important here is that this isn't just a list of nice ideas. These steps are backed by official policy. Sri Lanka has put legal frameworks in place, like the Flora and Fauna Protection Ordinance and a dedicated National Pollinator Conservation Plan. That shows a serious commitment to making this stuff actually happen.
So, we've seen the incredible work these pollinators do. We've met some of the key players in Sri Lanka, we understand the threats, and we've seen a clear path forward. Which really brings us to the final and most critical question. Thinking about your own community, maybe even your own backyard, how can you help protect your own unseen workers?